The Cleansing is a period piece thriller released in 2019, directed by Anthony Smith and written by David Shillito. The film follows a young woman in 14th century Wales when the deadly Black Plague is at its peak. A lusty man in the cloth begins to stir a rumor of her being a witch, but this rumor may be more truthful than anyone suspected. We open up on a nice shot of a waterfall before Alice, played by Rebecca Aycock, appears bloodied but able to walk. She walks through the "oh come on." It's another horror movie with a young woman walking through the forest at the start. Oh, and this one brought her wooden pentagram. It's a little different as she falls to her knees screaming before waking up inside her home. We then get a title card as Alice checks in on her mother, who hasn't exactly contracted chickenpox. Though, to be fair, during this time that would still be pretty bad. She concocts a nice tea, but with the mother coughing up blood, it might be best to lace the drink and end her suffering. Going outside, we see the village is doing no better. We also get our first look at Tom, played by Rhys Meredith, who I initially thought was in prison. I'm immediately proven wrong as he scares Alice, who is picking berries that one cannot eat.
Those for medicinal purposes.
It's the 14th century, so weed isn't invented yet. You gotta make do. Tom states how he hasn't seen Alice or her mother at church for some time, while she just stares at him like a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. So, creeped out, she gathers her laundry and heads back where we see the villagers tending to the dead. Now, if you haven't caught on yet, Alice doesn't speak. Normally, you'd be gentle when approaching this girl, not sending this spooky out-of-time doctor in. Otherwise known as the Cleanser, played by Simon Nehan. This doctor draws his weapon, and after finding evidence of plague, he kills the mother.
May the Lord have mercy on your soul.
Instead of quarantining the house or even just Alice, the priest walks right on in and apologizes, even going as far as to offer a few apples. He then offers to let her live in his house with a catch.
I want to offer you a place in my home. By my side.
He then acts like a banned Tier 3 simp.
Will you not even deign to speak with me out of anger? Ungrateful wretch, you'll be begging for my kindness soon enough. I assure you. Beware! A devil has possessed that one!
The priest claims she's possessed by the devil and all the villagers take his word. At their conference, the group is spurred on by this lady.
Where is Alice, Thomas? She broke the law and now my Richard is dead. Why is she not here being held to account?
Some in the group suggest the priest has a liking for Alice, but he denies this. The tipping point of the argument is the strangeness of Alice's father's death and the fact Alice is the only youth left alive. Mary, played by Abby Hurst, escorts Alice to a shed for her first test, though she is confused.
Tom, I thought we would discuss this in a civil manner.
We will. Come. Sit.
The way he's acting, add on 30 years and some scars, he could be Palpatine. The first test is for Alice to read the Lord's Prayer without stuttering, but like I said earlier, she doesn't talk. Obviously she fails, and the next test isn't so nice.
We have no choice but to search you for the devil's mark.
Finding no sign of a mark, Tom decides to have some one-on-one time with Alice. He pulls a slasher and says he can help her if she gives herself to him.
If you do not agree to these terms, I will have no choice but to proceed with a trial. So what will it be?
Her reaction isn't surprising. Eventually, he may get turned on by this. Alice herself is getting wet during the second trial, which is basically just drowning a person then asking them to recite the Lord's Prayer. They aren't trying that hard, as it barely looks like they could push her down, and she isn't that deep in the water. It even looks like she's lifting her own head out of the water. I know Alice is the wet one, but the village bitch seems to be getting off as well.
The devil has her tongue, Thomas. Drown her! It's the only way to lift the curse.
Of course, Tom isn't a cadaver lover and stops the trial. The next day, they try using hot coals. Better hope Arnold isn't a witch or he'd pass this test easy. During this trial, it proves too much and she is knocked out. Well, we tried all the fun stuff, so let's just string her up for 3 days. One night, Mary is put on watch and actually manages to get some words out of Alice.
Not a devil. I know it, but you need to tell them. Speak to them and maybe they'll let you go.
Whoever said let's put the woman sympathizing with the witch on watch was an idiot, as Mary frees Alice. Running far away, Alice tends to her hands with whatever natural means she can find. On the second day of her travels, it becomes clear something is stalking her. I must say the music accompanying this scene wouldn't be out of place in an old school horror game. She comes across a shack and is knocked out. Waking up, we get a brief glimpse of her captor before he realizes he didn't use enough and knocks her out again. Okay, one of these times we're going to be watching Alice in Wonderland. God knows there's enough drugs in this film. Waking up again, she arms herself and walks outside to find a man eating his breakfast. Despite her defensive nature, he offers her food and water, plus a place to sleep. However, this guy might be a druggie.
The smoke from this root will open your eyes to what's inside your heart. Fears, desires, they can manifest, but you must remember they are not real.
Well, when in Wales, I guess. Ah, so those were jump scare shrooms. And just like any other time you do mushrooms and someone left aliens on, it was all fake. While looking around, she comes across a small jar that the homeowner isn't too happy about.
Stop! Inhaling that will boil your insides.
It must be kept away from water.
That sounds familiar. While bonding, the man reveals that he used to work on a ship far from Wales. This is where he found that little white powder.
It was during one such conflict that I was introduced to that white powder, which you saw before. It was thrown in little clay pots from one ship to another. And when it came into contact with water, it reacted so ferociously.
He also reveals that he once had a daughter who died of the plague, as he feels that he failed to find a cure. Now he believes he won't ever find a cure. He is also able to be very ironic with what he says.
The devil is responsible for this curse. God could not create something so cruel.
The next day, when he goes out to gather, Alice has a look around. This triggers his simply safe senses, and he rushes back to find her rummaging around. His claims of her being a thief and wanting to sell the goods bring something out of her.
What? Were you planning to sell them?
No. I want to find a cure too.
And teach he does, but in a kind and gentle way. Alice should count herself lucky she didn't want to learn the drums. During dinner, it's revealed that the man himself is infected with the plague. He thinks Alice may be one of the lucky few who are immune. Then something about facing your demons, and here, take this root raw so you can embark on a drug-fueled journey that will show you the truth. Oh, and be careful, it will be extremely vivid. She then wakes up in the not-so-frozen forest, following a random man we discover soon after is her father. In flashback land, we see what a loving husband and father he was. But then we cut to the opening. It's only Satan if the pentagram is 2 points up, otherwise it is good. Also, Satan may be a woman.
It's a miracle that you're still alive.
It's not a miracle, Father. The woman pulled me out. I don't know. She came from under the waterfall.
Or maybe it's the sister of the Lady of the Lake. We are close to Scotland. Oh, and the father didn't take too well to the gift Alice received. In turn, Alice isn't too happy, and remember how everyone called her father's death strange?
You will remain in my sight at all times.
Look, I'll be more careful.
No! Never again!
You cannot be trusted.
I hate you.
It is for your own safety.
I hate you.
No, you don't.
I hate you.
That's enough.
I hate you!
Silence!
I want you to die!
Oh, and now there's the cleanser, and man, this would fit in a horror game. Fleeing into the shack, she's pursued and begins to fling everything she can, eventually grabbing that little jar filled with that white powder. And it's now revealed that the cleanser and the man are both Simon Nehan. I may have skipped a scene where the cleanser showed up at Tom's home, but no one ever said it was Alice who they believed was a witch. Of course, I suppose it's simple process of elimination on the cleanser's part. Deciding to kill her, Alice ends up having an X-Men moment of discovering her powers. One splash of water to the face, and in the words of Decker Shadow, the body count rises. So I guess makeup skills just come with discovering you're a witch, or murdering someone. I mean, I can't make myself a hot goth chick. Wait, what? Going in early, she burns thick bundles of what I'm guessing are leaves so as to create a thick smoke. The villagers take notice even when they are clearly not in the smoke. One villager finds the fire creating the smoke, but what I can only guess is teleportation leads to his death by a throat stab. Everyone is on alert now, which I call bullshit. Sure, she didn't hide the body, but they didn't find it. Chalk up one death to what I'm guessing was from burning some hallucinogenic roots. Atlas pulls a Sonya on one, and the most satisfying death comes via a drink of water infused with that white powder. Another villager pulls an Evil Dead, but he should know he's not wearing a blue shirt. Now alone, Tom is confronted by Alice.
Face me!
Not the best way to figure out that friendly fire is on. One chloroform later, and it's Tom who is strung up. Where is Caesar's Legion to demonstrate how to properly crucify someone? The plot comes full circle as she does recite the Lord's Prayer.
Very well. If it's proof you want. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. But forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Do not lead us to the time of trial, but rescue us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Oh, but what about Mary? Well, her and Alice walk off together, leaving the village dead and empty. So I guess that is a happy ending. So that was The Cleansing, and what did I think of it? Well, for starters, it isn't a horror film. It's listed as being a horror thriller, but it is in fact just a thriller. It doesn't really have any horror, and I don't count jump scares as horror. It's a simple but interesting enough film that was entertaining with capable acting across the board. Practical effects ranged from decent to good, with nothing all too bad. The story was pretty good, though parts didn't lend anything to the package as a whole. I actually skipped an entire segment where Alice and the cleanser meet a stranger out at the shack. Nothing was really added by the 10 to 20 minutes we spent with them, so for the sake of time I omitted the parts. While I went in fully expecting historical inaccuracies, I was pleasantly surprised to not see any fancy axes or swords. I will say that the time doesn't add up with this film. For starters, we need to understand that the bubonic plague lasted from 1346 to 1353 with sporadic pop-ups until the 19th century, with even rare appearances as recent as 2017 in Madagascar. That and this film takes place in Wales during the 14th century. Now, Wales wasn't hit with the Black Plague until about 1349. Plague doctors in their stereotypical attire didn't come about until the 17th century. The design is attributed to a French doctor, Charles de Lorme, probably mispronounced that, in 1619. The outfit was designed to restrict contact with infected. Unlike in the film, the eyes were covered with crystal lenses, and the beak of the mask was filled with fragrant perfumes, herbs, and flowers. Fun fact, Nostradamus was also a plague doctor. Another oddity was the existence of that white powder. For those unaware, this white powder is meant to be Greek fire. This was an incendiary weapon used by the Byzantine Empire during the 7th century, with Kallinkos of Heliopolis being credited with its creation. It was used against enemy ships via a flame-throwing weapon. It was believed to be able to burn when hit with water. The lead theories on what it is currently come down to naphtha and quicklime. Sadly, the exact answer has been lost to us for some time. The last account comes from two sources that claim to have seen its use in 1453 during the siege of Constantinople. However, most believe its existence was lost during 1099, so while this movie could be going off the two later sources, it's most likely that it would be impossible for anyone to have Greek fire in Wales during the 14th century, or have such a prevalent use that random ships are going at each other with it, let alone via clay pots. The dagger Alice has at the shack mostly resembles a Bollock dagger, which did actually exist in the 14th century. Now for the plague, again Wales was hit around 1349, so it's perfectly fine to place this movie in the 14th century. The depiction of plague victims, however, was a bit rubbish though. Those who were sick did occasionally cough blood, however I don't know what these small marks are. Signs of the plague consist of enlarged lymph nodes that could be as big as an egg. Usually these would occur around the groin or armpit region. They would eventually ooze blood and pus. At the time, doctors were unable to cure the plague. Everything from bloodletting to rubbing onions on the spot was tried. Those who believed it was punishment from God turned to self-harm through whipping themselves. These people are called flagellants. In 1361 to 1364, doctors discovered that bursting the enlarged lymph nodes would help. The witch trials depicted in this film are for the most part accurate to real trials people were forced at times to undertake. Unlike in the film, the witch's mark scene would have been done publicly. The dunking her in water isn't specified, but it was done as a more forced part of the prayer test with hints of the swimming test in there. However, I cannot find any record of the hot stone test nor crucifixion of anyone suspected of witchcraft. In fact, crucifixion ended in the 4th century, with its only later appearance in Japan during 1597, when 26 Christians were crucified in Nagasaki. Many more executed the same way over the course of the next century. Still, this isn't a bad film to watch late one night, and I suggest it. Be prepared for a slow burn and don't expect a full-blown horror movie. One thing that bothered me is how in one scene Tom says it will take too long for the cleanser to return to the village, but later in the film, he not only goes to the village, but he is able to get back to the shack within a day. How powerful were those mushrooms? Hell, was the whole thing in her head? We lost that glow filter she had when seeing her father, so I guess it wasn't. Anyways, the message is, kids, don't do drugs. And don't let the religious man touch you.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.